Hello, everyone. Here's Scooter with Scooter's Brass here for another interesting episode of Shooting the Brass. I'm hoping that everything is working like it's supposed to. I don't know if my audio is working right.
It is.
But let's hope for it. So for those of you that have never tuned in before, my name is Scooter. I have a channel on YouTube, of course, if you're watching YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook called Scooter's Brass, where I tend to go through a lot of I show a lot of videos from my competition shooting. I got started 2-3 years ago with a little thing called IDARM, Independence Day Action Rifle Match. It happens every year on the 4th of July, which is next week. So it's kind of fitting that it's my 3-year anniversary for the beginning of competition shooting. I also like to talk about a lot of stuff, a little bit of politics, mostly about how politics is bullshit, and about reloading, different types of firearms that I use, different types of what different purposes are for the optics, etc. So this is my 5th episode on the show. My 3rd episode got pulled from YouTube because my old intro had me showing firearms. I was explaining in a video the different firearms I use for competition, and they took offense and they pulled it down. So I had to upload it after the fact. So I changed the intro into the boring piece of crap that you see now at the beginning of the show with me just blah, 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 blah. Because YouTube sucks. But anyway, this is the first time I've tried to actually stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. So it's kind of a new experience. I've also got myself some better lighting. A good friend of mine, Kara, gave me some tips because she does these live video things every week. So it's kind of nice to have her give me a little idea of what I should and shouldn't be doing, or what will help and what won't help. So anyway, some of the things we want to talk about today, I'd like to go in a little bit more in depth into reloading. As you can see, I've got my reloading gear right here. This is what's called Scooter's Grotto out here. Mostly I've got my reloading bench here, some storage behind me. Over there, you can't see it, is my workbench where I actually work on firearms, clean them, adjust them, install customizations, etc. So let's get back into that first, and then we're going to talk, of course, about the 4th of July, because that is next week, and it's very important for all of us Americans to understand the importance of the July 4th and what happened. Me being a descendant of Major General Joseph Warren, who died at Bunker Hill, my family's been in the historical area of this country for generations. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about some social media stuff, things that happened this past week that I think is important to discuss to try to get people to start at least acting like they can work together. So first off, reloading. I just started reloading this year. I won a Hornady Lock and Load Classic single stage press at the 2021 Superstition Mountain Mystery 3-gun. It was on the prize table for the staff. I was one of the ROs, so I got to pick what I wanted from the table. And the staff tables at these things are really, really impressive. They had a whole bunch of firearms, long guns and handguns. They had a Dillon Precision reloading kit. They had the Hornady kit. I mean, they just have all these things. They have different type of custom things like triggers that they put in your package, or grips, folding stocks, uppers, lowers, all that kind of stuff. So it's really, really nice to be, to be staff at one of these large matches, because you can really win big. So I did win this year. I've been kind of teaching myself how to use it. I have a good friend that's helped me through a lot of it, but most of what I've been doing and learning has been through YouTube videos. How to set up your dies, how to, properly size your brass depending on what type it is. So we're going to go through the steps of what's required. And the first thing that, of course, you have to have is the gear. Now, you got your press, which is this right here, but it's just the press. So what goes along with this is you have to have a shell holder. The shell holder goes here, which you can't really see that well, but it goes here, and that's what holds the brass into the actual press. And that way you can decap your brass, you can resize your brass, you can expand the top of the brass so you can get the bullet in there, and then you can crimp and press the bullet into the brass, completing the round. Over here, I've got my 2 powder loaders. This one right here is for pistol, and this one is for rifle. They come with what's called a metering valve, which is this little doodaddy right here. You can see that this one is preset. Well, you can't really see it real well because it's flooded out by the light. But this is my my die for 308. So this is preset for 308. So all I do is I put it into there, and it automatically knows exactly how many grains I need to put in each round. I've got several of these, basically one for each type of ammo that I make, so that I don't get confused. All right, that goes there. Now, the first thing that you need is components. Okay, so there's the components that are a part of reloading. Is you have your brass, either new or used, primer, powder, projectile. Okay, those are the components that you need. Right now, the hardest thing to find is primers. It's really difficult to find primers. As a matter of fact, I haven't been able to find primers in months. I was lucky, and I had a friend who sold me some of it. He gave me some primers to get started for pistol and small pistol and small rifle primers for 223 and 9mm. And then I bought some large pistol primers and large rifle primers from him so I can load my 45 caliber and my 45-70 and my 308. So that's the beginning part, is getting those components, having the availability for those, which is really rare right now. Okay, the other things that you need to get is powder. Okay, I have a couple of different types of powder. For rifle, I have Hogden H322, and that powers my 308 and my 45-70 and my 223. For pistol, I have Hogden CFE pistol, and I also have Winchester. Let me look at my handy dandy notes here because I can never remember what the Winchester version is. There's a lot of different powders out there. It's Winchester WSF is what it's called. It can be used for shotgun and for pistol. I don't reload shotgun at this point in time, so I just use it for pistol. But it's kind of my backup powder. I'm sticking mostly with the Hogden. Now, I also have Hogden Longshot, which is another type of Hogden pistol powder, which is really good for any of your pistol type calibers, 38, 45, 9mm, any of that kind of stuff. So that's what I have right now. I have on order some Accurate powder, and I can't remember the numbers, the powder numbers on those, but I've got those on order because I was able to actually find some for rifle because that's kind of where I'm short. I've got plenty of pistol. I need some more rifle. So anyway, right now I'm loaded with the CFE pistol and the H322, both Hogden products. Now, for those of you that want to know, Hogden is a real good manufacturer of powders and stuff. They also have a really good resource on their website where you can go through and it'll help you program what ammo you're wanting to make and give you all the information. Okay, so this is printed off of Hogden's Resource Center. You can't really see it that well because it gets flooded out by the light. Maybe it'll turn in a little bit. Anyway, so this is for 9mm, and it tells you, you basically program in your bullet weight. In this case, it's 115 grain, and I'm using GAHPs, which are these bad little boys. They're hollow points, 115 grain hollow points. So I basically go down, download this information. You can keep it on a laptop, a web page or whatnot, or you can actually print out your thing. So for this, I was using, for these first rounds, I was using the Winchester WSF. Tells you what the bullet diameter is, the completed overall length, which is important because if it's too long, it won't fit in the gun. So it tells you for that round that, for example, 9mm, 115 grain JHP, the combined overall length should be 1.169 inches or smaller. And It's 5.2 grains per round, which gives you 1,095 feet per second, a pressure of 28,700 psi, or you can go up to 5.7 grain, which is the maximum load that they tell you to be, so that you don't explode your bullet. And it gives you all this information, and that way you can actually make your ammunition kind of per specification. There are other resources. Another resource that I use other than the Hogden website, of course, is this came with my kit. It's called Hornady Handbook of Cartridge Reloading. Very, very useful tool it's got lots of information for all different types. It tells you the different bullet weight sizes, how long your round should be when it's completed, what the casing trim length is for rifle rounds, etc. This came with my kit. I know you can buy this online. I think Hogden sells this. So does Hornady on their website sells this. Really, really good resource. And that helps you out. Now, so the first thing you do is you got to get your brass. There are a lot of different ways to do it. I get a lot of my components from EvergladesAmmo.com and MidwayUSA.com. Most of my brass and bullets are coming from Everglades Ammo. They've got a really, really good selection. And they'll send you brass. You can get brass that you can get from range brass, which is a lot cheaper than getting a new brass. Usually you have to end up depriming the brass. In this case, these are 45 ACP. I've already gone through and deprimed all of them. And so then you got to clean them. The way I clean them, and there are a couple of different ways you can clean them. You can use a dry tumbler in an ultrasonic tank to clean them, or you can use a wet tumbler, which is what I use. And for my wet tumbler, basically it comes with these little stainless steel pieces, because I use the Hornady TBL 100. You can see it kind of over here. And it comes with, I think, 2 pounds of stainless steel pieces that help polish the brass when it's in there. And you put your brass in there, you put the stainless steel in there, you fill it with water. And then the best, you can use different types of solutions. I know Hornady sells a type of solution. I think I got a bottle of it down there for cleaning brass. One of the tricks that I learned from one of the guys I shoot with was that you don't need to buy all this expensive chemicals. You just basically fill it with water, squirt in some Dawn dishwashing detergent, the original Dawn, not the smelly stuff with the stuff. And then you add just a touch of this, like a teaspoon of this stuff. It's called Lemmy Shine Dish Detergent Booster. Now, if you add too much, it makes your brass pink. But if you add just a tablespoon to your tumbler, it helps with the Dawn to make very, very clean looking brass. It's really nice. So that's how you clean it. You tumble it. The hard part, you can get a tumbler that separates the brass from the stainless steel pieces that polish. I've got one of those. I think it's a Lyman, I think. But basically you dump it all in there, you turn it, and it separates your brass from your cleaning supplies, your cleaning stainless. And then that way you can pull all the brass out and you can make it nice and clean. Once you take it out of the tumbler and everything, what I do is I dump it on the towel. You can see the towel on the chair behind me. Lay it on a flat space, dump your brass into it, and then kind of wrap it up and shake it like you do what you would do with cleaning a bowling ball, where you just kind of go back and forth. And that gets most of the heavy water out of the inside of the brass. And that works for no matter what kind of brass you have, whether it's rifle brass, handgun brass, etc. Then you can do a couple of different things. You can put it in the oven at like 200 for 30 minutes or whatnot, and it'll help dry out the rest of the brass. I don't like that because it tends to also make them a little more dull. What I use is I've got a humidifier or a dehydrator that I got on Amazon, and I set it for about an hour and a half at 113 degrees, give or take. And it dries the brass out really nice. It doesn't tarnish them, doesn't make them look heat treated. So they come out real pretty. So that takes care of that part. Then you go to the part where, depending on what type of bullet you're making, depends on what you do next. Now, the main thing that you have to get for each type of round that you do is you need a set of dies. Okay. Handgun dies usually come 3 dies to a pack. You have your decapper, You got your deprimer, your expander to expand the top so you can put the bullet in, and then your punch and crimp. And that means that it basically puts the bullet down to the specific distance down you want, or depth into the brass you want it, and then crimps it in. Rifle ones come with usually 2 rounds, although 4570 also has 3 bits, just like a pistol. But 308 and 223 came with 2 dies. One die is specifically made to deprime and resize the shell casing at the same time. You get that expansion whenever you fire it, and the decapper / resizing die fixes that and makes it back to a good bullet. And then you have your die that puts the bullet into a certain depth and then crimps it, or you can have it not crimp. I actually have a Lee factory crimp die for 223. A friend of mine recommended I get this. This is specifically for 223, and I use it on all my rounds. I don't use the actual RCBS die as a crimper. I use this one because it puts a really nice crimp on it, and it's probably one of the better crimps on the market. So I've got a combination. I've got 2 Hornady dies. I've got a Hornady die for 38 and 357. I've got a Hornady die for the 9mm Luger set, and I've got the Lee dies for the 45 caliber ACP. From all my rifles are all RCBS dies for small base for my 308 and my 223, and I also have a 3-die steel set for my 4570. Which is a rifle, but it's a straight case as opposed to the necked case like you would see on a 308 or a 223. So it has a little different die set. Now, I'm not going to tell you this is a cheap hobby because it sure as hell isn't. These things cost. The die sets alone are probably between $60 and $80 a piece. I decided when I first started doing this that I wanted to go through and get dies for all of the ammunition for every firearm that I have, so that if I need to, I can make ammo for every single one of my firearms. So I went through and I've got 6 different die sets based on my ammo size. The only thing I don't reload at this point is shotgun and 22 long rifle. So another thing you need to get when you're starting to work with your brass and cleaning your brass is what's called a case gauge. And what this is, it's a gauge specifically made for whichever ammo you're making. In this case, it's 4570. And this is how you can make sure your brass is the right size before you load it. Because if you load it, you could have a bubble in there somewhere. It won't fit this gauge. Now you've wasted a projectile, powder, and a cap. So always take your brass, and once it's cleaned and everything, just test it out. I mean, you put it in there. If it slides all the way down like this just did, then it's a good round, or it's a good case. So I do this before I load any of the brass that I do. I've got one of these for every single type of round that I make, so that I can check the brass before I load it. It saves you a lot of time and it saves you a lot of waste, because once you put your primer in, it's pretty much toast if you have to try to get it out. And if you do get it out, it may not work. But the hard part is we can't get primers anymore these days, so you don't want to waste them. So I've got one of these that I checked all the brass and everything before I actually start making the rounds. For 223 and 308, I'll actually go through, I'll resize, deprime, resize, and then if I need to trim the brass, I'll trim the brass, clean it again, and then test it before I start loading it. And that's just a good practice that I have for me, because I'm that way. The next thing that you need to worry about, let me see. So that's the case gauge. You need to be able to clean the primer pocket on all your rounds. So they have different types of tools you can use. They've got manual primer pocket tools that'll clean it. That'll some pockets, whenever it gets fired, it either shrinks or expands. So you can, some primers won't go in unless you route it out a little bit. They've got bits for that. You can do it by hand, or you can do it. I've got a little 3-prong machine that has to trim the, or to clear off the outside of the brass, the inside of the brass, and the pocket hole on it. It just basically spins in a circle, and you put your brass in there, and it cleans it up for you. It's pretty easy to do. So you got all that done. Now it's time to actually make your rounds or start prepping your rounds. So in this case, let's go with our we're going to go with our RCBS 33 die steel set 4570. Now the cool thing about the Hornady lock and load is that it comes with these things. They're called lock and load die bushings. Okay, so basically once you set your bushing on your machine with one of these, all you got to do is twist and pull it up. And then the next time you put it back in there, you push it in, turn a little to the left, and it's at the precise same place as it was the last time you used it. So it's real easy to set your dies and then forget them. So each one of these has one built. I installed it because I made some 4570 yesterday for the first time. This is a shell holder. It's basically just a little piece of metal that you put into the bottom of the press here, so that when you put your round in, it basically slides in and it is held in place. That's all it is. It's got a hole in it so that when you're you prime it, deprime it. Now the die goes up in here. This is the deprime and resizing die. Slide that in, a little bit of a twist, and you're set. Now I can sit here and play with it all day long. The thing about single stage presses, though, is that you can only do one step at a time. So what I do is I count out, okay, yesterday I made 20 rounds of 4570. So I cleaned all the brass, deprimed all the brass, cleaned all the brass, measured the brass, checked the brass, make sure it was all good, got it all dried and everything, got it all ready. So then I made my 20 rounds. I used this die on 20 rounds to deprime and resize. And when you resize rifle rounds, you need to have lubricant on your brass or they will stick in the die in your toast. What I use is the Hornady one-shot case lube. I don't know if you can see that, how well you can see it. You basically take your brass, you throw it in a Ziploc bag, you spray liberally this into the bag in there, close the bag up a little bit, and then roll everything around. And that lubricates your brass so that when it goes up into the actual die, it doesn't stick. Because if it sticks, now you're going to have to try to get that thing out, and you can mess up your die, or you'd have to, at the minimum, reset your dies because they may be off. So you put this in there, you resize it. Then you use calipers, or they do have this Lyman guide that has different size cartridges on here so that you can check your brass to make sure it fits. If it doesn't fit into this guide, that means it's too big and too long, and you need to resize it, which means that you'll have to get a resizing tool. And there's my dog Ruger. As you can see down at the bottom, it says you may hear foul language of dogs barking. There's the dog barking. So for resizing brass, I use the Hornady. It's got blades and whatnot here. You put your shell holder here. You put your brass on here. You suck it down. You measure it ahead of time to make sure it's in the right place, and then you basically just trim it off, right? Pop it off, and then you can use the tool to trim the outside and make sure it's all clean. So that's where you got your brass done. So once you're done with depriming and all that other stuff, then you clean the brass. Usually for rifle brass, the recommendation that my friend gave me was that you clean the brass, then deprime and resize and clean it again. Because if you're picking up range brass, you could have rocks and dirt and a bunch of other stuff inside the shell casing. And if you throw your die into that, you could damage your die and or break it. So clean the brass, deprime and resize, clean again, dry it, you're ready to go. Then you put in your spreader. The spreader die goes in there, and that basically just opens the end of the brass up enough to where you can actually kind of get your bullet started in there so that it doesn't fall over when you're trying to go to the press. And then you got the one that actually, it takes a little bit to adjust it so that you basically take this pushes the bullet down to a specific height, whatever height you measure it out as, what you want it as. And it does take a few times. It's one of those things where you start high and then slowly work your way down until the round is the right length. Then it crimps. Then you can set it to crimp. And then you're done. It's actually, it's very scientific. There's lots of help online that tells you how to set your dies. It shows you how to put the bullets together, give you tips and tricks on cleaning, etc. So now what I do, or what I have, of course, is my dog barking. I I'm been reloading 9, and I'm doing this for myself. I do load. Oops, drop that round right there. I do load 38 special because I have a friend that has a 38, and she's been having trouble getting ammo. She's a family friend. She's been a friend of the family for probably almost 2 decades. So I told her I would make her some bullets when she needs them. So I got the dies and everything, and the brass and the bullets and everything, so I can make rounds for her. Otherwise, I would not be making 38 special because I don't have one of those. I've got my 45 ACP, excuse me. This is what my everyday carry is. I don't compete using a 45 unless I'm doing PCC, and even then, I use 9mm because it's cheaper to shoot for a match. And then, of course, I've got my 223 rounds that I load for competition. I need to get them down to the range and get them under a chronograph so I can test them. I do my own 308s, 150 grain 308 rounds for my AR-10. And then my last round is the elephant gun one. This is the 4570. It's a 405 grain polymer coated round. Now, the thing about the 4570 is that if you have just the lead bullets, it can foul up your barrel. So they tell you to oil the lead so that it doesn't actually shed off in the actual rifle, your barrel as it's fired. These are polymer coated, and so they pretty much do the same thing without having to oil them. I got these at Sportsman's Warehouse. They had a whole bunch of them, and I was actually very surprised that they had the 405 grain, because usually you can find them in the 300 grains, but the 405s are a little harder to find. So I've got those. Now, one of the other things, too, is for storage. Now, I get these storage cases, and these are, of course, made in the USA, just so you know, off of Amazon. They usually have, it's made by MTM Case Guard. This one's specific for rifles, so I can do my 4570s and my 308s, which you see here like this. And I also do my 223. Those are the only rifle rounds that I make. Then, of course, I got the 45 caliber ACP one for those. And then I've got my 9mm version. Ta-da. And my 308 version. And these are not that expensive. They're about $4 to $5 a piece on Amazon, which is where I got them. So they're pretty easy to get. You can get them just within a day or two, whatnot. And that way you can also, if you go to the range and you're using your brass, you can always put your brass back in here so you can keep a record of how many times they've been fired. You know, that does account for if you fire them too many times, then you could blow the back off the casing, which gives you a bad shell and gives you a casing stuck in the barrel, you know, that kind of thing. So once you get that done, you get your brass resized and everything. Making the bullet is relatively easy after that. You just measure out your powder, and I use a scale to make sure that my rounds. It's Frankfurt Arsenal reloading tools. And it's a decent little scale. It's not that expensive, and you get them on Amazon. It's pretty accurate, so I can measure out my powder and get my metering valve set for depending on what round I'm using. It's all good. And that's pretty much the basics of reloading, is getting your brass, getting the components, cleaning the brass, sizing the brass, making sure the brass is decent, priming the brass, and getting it made. Lots of resources online. Of course, I told you about the Hogden. That website is www.hogden, which is HODGDON.com. They also talk about their different types of powders they make or whatnot. Hogden's pretty good about that. Got some good powder. From what I understand, Accurate is too. So I'll be testing some of that once I've got 3 different, I think 6 pounds, 3 different rifle powders coming that I'm going to test to see which one I like best for my 223 and 308. I'll probably stick with the H322 for my 4570 because it's pretty good powder for that. It takes time. It takes finesse. It's not an easy thing to get started with, I can tell you that. It's not a cheap thing to get started with, but once you actually get all of your components, get your dies, your setup, get it all pretty much put together, it's real easy to come in and just sit down and make rounds. So that's one of those things that I think people should learn. It's a good skill, especially if you want to do a lot of shooting. For me, I'm doing competition shooting, and while ammo is really, really expensive right now, I went to my sponsor yesterday to pick up some 308 for next week's IDARM, and it was $29.95 a box of 20. So it's still pretty expensive, but I did notice when I was there, they had more guns on the shelves, they had more ammo available of all different sizes. So it looks like maybe we're kind of getting past the blackout on ammo, where you can't find ammo, and if you do find it, it's really, really expensive. Hopefully the prices will start coming down again, because like my friend, she was looking for 38 special, and I sent her a picture because I was there at AJI and they had a bunch, but it was still $34.95 for a box of 50 for 38 special. That's pretty expensive. So reloading, it's good practice. It's good to have, and that way, say, have the zombie apocalypse, I know that I can make more ammo, because I'm not going to, risk myself going to the gun store to get ammo, knowing that there's going to be zombies in the way. That's just me. So, but anyway, that's our reloading episode part for today. If you do have any questions about what kind of items I use for different types, any questions about the reloading that I do, I probably don't have all the answers, because I've only been doing this since about March, but I'm willing to give you tips, tricks, or whatnot. You can message me on Facebook. You can message me, comment on YouTube or whatnot. You can email me at scootersbrass@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you, try to answer your questions as best as possible. And if I don't know the answer, I'll try to find a link to something that will give you the answer, or a person that I might know. I'll get with them and find out. So that's this part of the show. Next part of the show is July 4th. Now, it kind of also leads into the social media. Excuse me while I get comfortable, because this it gets kind of uncomfortable sometimes just sitting here like this. The 4th of July is a pretty much the biggest celebration in our country's history, because it was the fact that it was time that we declared ourselves independent from England. Now, everybody knows the consequences of what that happened. We ended up with the Revolutionary War. We were able to defeat the British, and one of the reasons we were able to defeat the British was because we didn't fight the same way they did. We had the militias. And I know that a lot of you have probably seen the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson. It was kind of if you look at the historical part of it, as opposed to the actual drama part of it, that's the way war was fought back in the 1700s. If you had more men in your lines firing guns, then you usually won that battle, because of the fact that you just outnumbered them. Now, the thing with the militia was the militia didn't fight rank and file like that. The militia would use guerrilla warfare tactics. They would strike from the side. They would strike from surprise attacks. They would do all that kind of stuff. And that's one of the reasons why our country defeated the British, was because we didn't follow the standard gentleman's battle plan. And it worked. We were greatly outnumbered. They had way more resources than we did, but we were still able to defeat them. A lot of that had to do with just the tenacity of the American person. So that's where that is. It's a pretty big celebration time for me, because it is when I started my competition shootings back in 2018. The Independence Day action rifle match happens every year. Part of the proceeds goes to the Phoenix Children's Hospital. So to me, it's kind of an important match, regardless of how I do, because of the fact that it's geared towards not only celebrating the sport, but also as a charitable event to children who are in need. So I make sure that every year I shoot this match, because I want to be a part of that. This year I'll be shooting my Diamondbacks DB10. I would show it to you, but YouTube will cancel my show again for showing a firearm, which is against their rules. But it's a 308 model. It's I'm limited to a 20-round magazine capacity. I have a True Glow scope on it, which I've used in several matches. And I used this rifle in last year's IDARM too. The thing I like about the rifle is that, number one, if you're shooting heavy, which is what the 308 is, you only have to hit each target once, as opposed to if you're shooting 223 or whatnot, you have to hit the targets twice. So just by using the 308, I'll save ammo. And that way I don't burn through my 308 ammo. I still need to test all of my ammo that I've made through a chronograph to make sure that the ballistics are good. And then I can go from there. But it's a run and gun. So you have targets from 9 yards out to 100 yards this year. Last year we had targets out to 300 or 400 yards, which is nice. The year before we had they were out to 300 and 400 yards also. And I like learning. I've been learning and teaching myself how to use my scope better. And I downloaded an app, I think it's from Strager, that you can enter in your caliber, your rifle, set your scope type, all this other kind of stuff. And then you tell what your distance is, what your windage is, etc. And it tells you and it shows you on a picture what dot on your scope to put on the target to hit at different distances. So I'm learning how to use the holdovers on that. It's been helpful. I was able to hit the 500 yards at SMM3 this year for the first time in three years. So it's good experience. Any type of match where you actually learn how to shoot on the run, change magazines on the run, use your firearm on the run, multiple targets, etc., is good training. I would recommend that you find training or competitions in your area that you can get into to help you learn more about being safe and effective with your firearms. And then the week after that is the Rio Salado July multi-gun match, which I think is July 10th. So I've got IDARM this weekend, this coming weekend. I've got 3 guns the next weekend. So we're not going to have the show next week because of the fact that I'm going to be shooting IDARM, so I won't be here. We will be doing some videos for IDARM. They'll be on the website, on YouTube and Facebook. After I get done with the match, I usually go through, I do a picture-in-picture, so you've got the GoPro view plus the back camcorder view so that you can see where I'm at on the stage and what I'm doing. So those will be on Facebook and YouTube and Gunstreamer within a day or so after the match. That way, I'm just trying to make content because my whole goal has been, and I'm kind of drifting away from the whole 4th of July thing, my whole goal is to try to get more people involved. But back to the 4th of July. The Declaration of Independence was made and signed. That's where the July 4th holiday comes from. It's a celebration of our declaration that we will no longer live under monarchy rule. We were tired of taxation without representation. It led to the Boston Tea Party, Paul Revere's famous ride, that kind of thing. And we as people in the United States need to remember our history of how we got here. Because honestly, with the way things are going now, we need to go back to where we were in 1776, where we were all Americans. Nowadays, we're not all Americans. Apparently, you're either conservative or liberal, and that's how they judge you. For me, I don't believe in either. I'm an independent voter now. I used to be a Democrat, but since I have a strong Second Amendment affinity and support, I couldn't really be with that kind of party when they want to ban the weapons that I use or the firearms that I use in competition. So, the 4th of July is not about barbecues and it's not about fireworks. It's about the celebration of the beginning of our country. So keep that in mind next weekend. And one of the things I would ask you to do if you've got fireworks, if you're not going to a fireworks display someplace and you have fireworks, remember there are two types that you could be negatively impacting veterans with PTSD, and animals that go nuts whenever they hear all the loud bangs. So if you're in your neighborhood and you're firing those fireworks off, you're affecting your neighbors. You could be negatively affecting those neighbors. So please keep that in mind when you're running around with fireworks. Is to not. We were hearing fireworks last night in our neighborhood. It's not 4th of July yet, guys. Put those damn things away. But keep in mind that you're going to have people with PTSD and animals and whatnot that get freaked out and have trauma because of those. It's just kind of respectful. We want to respect our veterans, especially ones that have gone through combat and have still not mentally come back from that combat. Keep that in mind next weekend. I do suggest that you grill. I do suggest that you have family and friends that you get together with. I know it's still COVID time, but we had COVID last year. It was 3 days of annoyance, and that was it. So we're not afraid to meet up with friends and family and have a good time for Thanksgiving, or not Thanksgiving. I'm way ahead now. 4th of July. We are going to be on Friday. We're going to go fishing. It's going to be our first fishing trip in a long time. Last year, because we were considered essential and or sacrificial, whichever one you want to call it, we worked 6 days and 7 days a week for 46 weeks last year. So this year, things have calmed down to where we actually have our weekends. We're kind of getting back into the habit of trying to remember what it's like to have life past COVID. So we're getting a boat. We're renting a boat next week on Friday. We're getting the fishing poles, lots of snacks. We're getting out on the lake. Going to try to catch some walleye and some bass, if we can, if we don't make fools of ourselves in the process. So that's why we won't be here next week. The last thing I wanted to talk about was some stuff that I saw on social media this week. For those of you know, I do have a TikTok that I've been posting little snippets of my matches and stuff. And occasionally I comment on some of the other For You page stuff that I see. And I made a comment, or I made a little short For You, or a stitch, where I was answering a question or making comments on something that somebody said. And somebody popped in and was kind of being an asshole about it, saying that, if I supported this current administration, or thanks to me and my vote, I think I said something about so the original vote thing was say something or say something that is controversial but shouldn't be. So my response to that was, liberals, we own guns too. And this person, of course, then made a comment about how it was because of liberals like me, you just wait and find out. And so I asked him, what do you mean by that? And apparently, in his mind, if I'm a liberal, I'm the problem. Okay. Even though I support the Constitution, even though I'm a Second Amendment supporter, which is what my channel is based on, all of that, because I'm a liberal, I'm the problem. And that's not true. Okay. I may be a liberal, but I'm not stupid. I didn't vote for Biden because I knew that him and his administration were going to do everything they could to take away my Second Amendment rights. I don't agree with that. So, of course, I didn't vote for him. But because I'm a liberal, people assume that I did. They make the assumption that because I'm a liberal, I voted for Biden. You guys, stop it. Okay? Stop doing that kind of culture. Okay? Don't lump me in with liberals that don't like guns, because I'm not. All right? Now, I did find some conservative supporters on that thread who went back and forth with me and found that, one of the things was, okay, so you're a liberal and you like guns, but will you stand up if they come to take them? And I told them directly in video, yes, I will stand next to you and defend that right, because that's the way I am. And yes, there's many, many liberals in this country that are just like me, that believe in supporting the entire Constitution. Not the little pieces that make it convenient for whatever our background is, but every single constitutional amendment. But that's one of the things that irritates me about social media is you have these people that are very extreme on either the right or the left or the dog. That specifically, their job is to go out there and try to shake the tree, telling me that because I'm a liberal, I am the problem. No, you're the problem because you don't understand this country was founded by conservatives and liberals side by side. You can deny it all you want, and you can think it's not true, but that doesn't erase history. That's the way it was. And we still can do that. We can still have a very good country for everybody with liberals and conservatives working together. And that's the key. That's the key that everybody seems to have forgotten is the working together part. Because over the past 10 to 15 years, we've gone from working together to line votes and partisan elections and partisan down ballot voting, where you basically go through your entire ballot and you vote for one party, regardless of who's in there. Well, yeah, now look what we've got. We've got Democrats that are voting Republican all the time, and we've got Republicans that are voting Democrat. We can't do this anymore. We have to remember that the whole idea about Congress is representatives from every state working together to make this country better. They're not doing that anymore, folks. And they're getting you to fall into it by making comments like that. If you're a liberal, you're part of the problem. If you're a conservative, you're part of the problem. No. If you're a dumbass idiot, then you're part of the problem. Because his statement was very ignorant. And apparently he thinks that we're going to find out, us liberals are going to find out eventually because for some bullshit. So I would recommend, folks, that regardless of which side of the fence you are on, don't play into that because that's what they want you to do. They want us to stay divided because it's easier to divide and conquer than it is to conquer a unified group. So when you're talking about our Second Amendment rights, please don't alienate those on the left from the conversation because we are here to help protect that right. Even though you don't like us because we're liberals, we all still can agree that the Second Amendment is a right, a constitutional right, just like the First, just like the Third, the Fourth, the Fifth, all the way up to, I think there's 27, 26, 25th. I have to actually go. I carry a Constitution with me in my backpack all the time. So I always have the Constitution with me because it is the founding documentation of our country. So when you're on social media and you see people making those types of stereotypes, call them out on it. Tell them that it's not true. Start treating people as Americans as opposed to defining them by their political affiliation. Because, in my opinion, politics right now, both political parties or all the political parties or whatnot, are what's wrong with our country because they care about their own power, not actually fixing the problems. Regardless of who's in control, problems don't get solved either at the state level or at the federal level. So, what else was there? Big shout out to Texas. Texas is now a constitutional carry state and also a 2A sanctuary state. I do have to tell Texas, though, you're a bit behind because, those of us in Arizona, we've been like that for a long time now. But, hey, glad you could catch up with us. And I'm just poking fun at my friends from Texas because I grew up in Texas, just outside of Amarillo. More and more states are now becoming constitutional carry states, which is nice because it goes basically says I can carry concealed without a permit. I can open carry without a permit. Now, my wife and I are going to get our CCWs renewed in a couple of weeks because there are some things that the CCW actually helps with. If you're traveling and having an Arizona CCW, you have reciprocity with 36 different states where you can actually carry your handgun concealed because you have your permit in Arizona. It also makes it easier. So if I go to buy a gun, I don't have to go through the background check because I know this is going to piss off some liberals because they say, see, you're not doing background checks on every. Okay. When you get a concealed carry, your fingerprints are going into the FBI database along with all of that kind of stuff. So your background's already been checked by the FBI. Duh. So you can also carry a firearm within 1,000 yards of a school if you have a CCW. If you don't, you're not supposed to be within 1,000 yards of a school with a firearm. So there are some perks to having a CCW. So we're going to go back and get ours renewed. It's been a while since we did that. So I guess in closing, be safe out there, folks. Be aware. We've had a lot of violence going on. We just had, where was that? I was reading on the news about, I think it was Sacramento. A guy went nuts with his car, and he ran over a pedestrian. And when somebody stopped to help the pedestrian, he turned around and ran over to them too. Then he rear-ended another car, and he got out swinging a crowbar and was beating a guy to death with it. And somebody with a firearm owner, shot him. And you're not seeing a lot of this in the news because there's certain things missing. Number one, although the guy with the crowbar did have a gun, it wasn't a scary black rifle. And number two, they don't like to put on the news that a good guy with a gun stopped a bad guy with the gun because that doesn't fit the narrative. So all I can say is that you really need to pay attention to your surroundings. We do have people out there, especially post-COVID, because we were all on lockdown, that have, mental conditions that could cause them to go off the rails. And they're going to use whatever the tools they have or that they want to make that possible if they're going to go out and hurt somebody, as we saw. The guy didn't use the firearm. He had one, and he was waving it around, but he didn't shoot anybody. He just beat a guy with his crowbar, and then he ran over two people. So that's the next question. Is the crowbar an assault crowbar? And is the vehicle an assault vehicle? And the handgun that he had, is that an assault handgun? We work by definition, folks. And an assault anything is a device used in an assault. So if I'm using a rifle or a handgun or a knife or a crowbar or a fire extinguisher or a car, you can label them all assault. Are we going to ban all those? Are we going to go through now and ban crowbars? Because this guy assaulted and killed people with a car and a crowbar. That's how silly this sounds. If you don't want to own a gun, don't own one. But don't try to interfere with everybody else's right to own a firearm, because that's what it is. It's our constitutional right. And I get in arguments with lefties all the time who tell me that I'm not a lefty because I own a gun. Well, no, I'm an American. I'm a lefty by my political leanings, but I'm still an American. And I consider myself a patriot because I love my country. And I will do what I need to do for my country, whether it's standing up for the right, standing up for the left. I try to stand up for what's right without all the flack. So I think if people would start doing that and start remembering that this country was founded by both left and right, and we're coming up on another nation's birthday, it would behoove us all to keep that in mind when we're dealing with other people that may not agree with us, because everybody has a right to their own opinion, and everybody has a right to say whatever they want to say. Your responsibility is to, number one, is what they're saying truthful? And you do that by actual research. And I don't mean watch a couple of YouTube videos. And make your own decision. When you look at the news isn't news anymore. It's opinion. Okay. So here we have building in Florida fell. Structural problems. So it half collapsed. We have 9 people dead and still a lot of people missing. That's the news. That is the facts. Okay. But if you look at all these stations, Fox News, MSNBC, CBN, blah, 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 all of CNN, all of these things, they're going to take that fact and then they're going to add a bunch of little opinions to it, which change the concept or the context of the facts. Don't let them do that. Stop living in that type of a landscape where you believe all the shit they say, because their job is to get ratings. Not to tell you the truth. Their job is to make you angry or whatnot, or get an emotional response from you one way or another, so that you will listen in on the next report. and the next report, and the next report. And that's how the media has just totally destroyed our country, because it's all partisan. Depending on which it's almost impossible to get any nonpartisan factual news that's just news. Hopefully one of these days that'll come back. But until then, I would suggest limiting what type of news you watch, what type of things you see, and actually do research based on what the fact in the story is, because you may be getting fed a line of bullshit that has a ring of truth. If you put a ring of truth into a story and you can actually look it up and say, oh yeah, so that building did collapse, they must be accurate, they must be true. No, the building collapsed, yes, but all of the other stuff they add to it, that's where you got to remember it's not all facts. So keep that in mind when you're on the internet, when you're watching TV, etc., because that makes a difference between having factual information and being able to make an educated assumption based on that and spreading fake news. And like I said, call people out when they're extreme. Call people out when they demonize people for being different, for not being of the same political party. Don't say that liberals are stupid, because we're not. Don't say conservatives are stupid, because they're not. Okay, some might be. Okay, we'll go there. Well, I'll give you that. There are some dumb ones out there on both sides of the aisle. I fully support that statement because I've seen them online and in person. But there's a lot of people in this country that are stuck in the middle of this battle that are just tired of it, exhausted from the constant pummeling of this kind of rhetoric. So please, let's stop doing that. So future episodes. July 11th will be the next time that Shooting the Brass is on, and I will be having special guests on the show for the first time. Ed Gardner, who is the executive director of the Liberal Gun Club, will be on the show with me. Also, Laura, and I hope I say this right, Cullinane Smith, who is the spokesperson for the Liberal Gun Club, will also be on the show. And we'll have a nice chit chat about the Liberal Gun Club, which I'm a member of, and what their goals are, what their ideas are, and what they're doing to help protect the Second Amendment and to help bridge that gap so that anybody that's an American citizen can use and utilize the Second Amendment properly. I've also been in touch with a good friend of ours. Her name online is American Gun Chick. A lot of you have probably seen some of her stuff. We're going to have her on a further future episode. And there's another guy from the Liberal Gun Club. He has his own company that's a defensive training company. I want to get him on the show so we can talk about that, because personal defense, whether you have a firearm or not, is critical to survival, especially in areas where you have high crime. So I'll get him on the show, and hopefully I can get some more competitors to come on the show and talk about the different things they do for their competitions. And yeah, so that's what we're looking at towards the future. So we'll be back on July 11th, noon on Sunday, and we'll have a good discussion and talk about the Liberal Gun Club, root cause analysis, which I think is the most important thing that we need to look at when trying to decide what common sense gun legislation needs to be. And remember, folks, gun legislation doesn't do shit for the criminals, because they don't care. If they're going to do the crime, they don't care about the law, period. So keep that in mind. Thanks for listening in today. Hope you guys have a good weekend. Have a very safe and enjoyable holiday next week. Try to stay out of trouble. Don't blow off your hands or other body parts. Don't burn down any buildings. And keep things safe. All right? Have a good one, guys.